Hello, it's Kyler here. This is week 79 in Intuitive Momentum Fitness. And today we're talking about self-love and self-respect. And the way this comes down to health and affects our health, which is kind of the apparent piece of the iceberg that is the most obvious aspect of our well-being, our physical health, and why most of us start questioning everything about the way we're living in order to try to be the most healthy that we can be, is that when life is out of balance and we're caring for others more than we're caring for ourselves, which is a kind of a toxic coping strategy, survival strategy, and that does help us in certain seasons of our lives, but when it carries on for longer than it should, then we get imbalanced in our health and our well-being. So when everyone around us is more important than we are in our own equation, in the result of the way that we end up doing life, then things get really, really unhealthy within our bodies, within our spirit, within our emotions, our mind, and it causes problems, even autoimmune issues. So how do we adjust that? How do we right that? And first we have to kind of understand aspects of the problem. And in order to do that, this week for this discussion, I selected 3 memes that came across my path this week, and wanted to share that with you guys. The first one is a tweet from Dr. Glenn Patrick Doyle, and he says, when we haven't been taught self-love and self-respect, those things might have to start with behavior rather than belief. So behaving toward ourselves as if we were someone we loved and respected, even if we're not quite feeling it yet. It's not about faking it, it's about getting practice with it. So I love what he says here. I think there's, especially with people who strive to be as genuine and good and authentic as possible, then the idea of faking something is really off-putting. And so if you've never been taught to love yourself or shown examples of loving yourself or respecting yourself, and then you try to do that and it feels fake, then you may decide you don't want to do that because it's not authentic, it doesn't feel sincere. So he points out here that it's not about faking it, it's about getting practice with it. So you practicing loving yourself and respecting yourself still feels inauthentic, but if you can think of it in the frame of practice, which also doesn't feel authentic or real or established yet, then it's more tolerable and you give yourself more of a chance to stay with it while it feels uncomfortable. So if you've experienced trauma, you probably have experienced abandoning yourself in in not loving yourself the way you should and not respecting yourself the way you should. And if you are an empath, and by empath I mean someone who is so tuned in with the emotions and experiences of other people that they're not really in their own experience, which is on the scale opposite from narcissism. So someone whose personality tends toward narcissism, they're naturally more in tune with their own emotions, their own experience, than with the emotions and experience of others. So most people who have experienced long periods of trauma, complex trauma, are people who are on the empathic end and tend to be so tuned in to everyone else's emotional and literal experience that they're not tuned in with themselves. And so obviously that's out of balance, just like the extreme narcissistic end is out of balance. And so we're hopefully all moving toward a better balance and toward the center. So if you've experienced trauma, then you are likely to tend toward, for survival reasons, being more in tune with others and prioritizing others over yourself. And so if that goes extreme, if that gets carried out as far as it often does, then some of your experience is self-abandonment. You are not loving and respecting yourself as much as you love and respect others, which energetically is not really possible, because we can only love others as much as we love ourselves. So there's some kind of imbalance, definitely unhealthy imbalance happening there, because and I believe it does get felt by others. Like, others know that you're not giving, can sense that you're not giving out of your fullness, but out of a need, whether that need is for safety or for reciprocation or whatever it is. There's some kind of need when you abandon yourself to take care of someone else, because just with the laws of physics, you're going to need someone else to take care of you if you're not taking care of you. So balance in this situation means I love me as much as I love someone else. And if we're really to look at it, you have to love and respect yourself. I guess loving and respecting yourself as much as you love and respect others does carry inherent care that favors you more than others, because you are more responsible for yourself than you are for others. You have more agency, more jurisdiction over your own life than you have over anyone else's. No one else over your lifetime is going to be more responsible for you than you. If you don't prioritize you, who will? So from that perspective, loving yourself and loving others, and respecting yourself and loving and respecting others in equal measure means that you care for yourself more, because you are more responsible for you than for anyone else. So that was kind of a big aha moment, not necessarily in the mental understanding, but in like the feeling state of it for me this week. I can practice loving and respecting myself, even when I don't feel it. And I'm not being fake, it's just practice. And so that was super helpful in some situations where I do tend to self-abandon. Nothing crazy, but even just thinking more about the emotional experience of the people that I'm with than my own, and just like, reminding me to be in my own body and my own experience. So that was the first one. The second meme that I shared is called Boundaries, and it's talking about what is my responsibility and what isn't my responsibility. It's not my job to heal others, please others at my expense, make it work if the effort isn't mutual, continuously compromise, tiptoe around you, anticipate your needs, change myself to your liking. It is my job to heal myself, listen to my needs and my desires, respect myself and my time, be true to my authentic self, set healthy boundaries that protect my energy, leave when I'm not being valued, say no when it's not in alignment, and be mindful with my yes. So this isn't to say that we don't need each other. This isn't to say that we don't need anyone else. It doesn't mean to say that others don't need us. It's just remembering who's responsible for who. And if I'm taking care of me and I'm making sure that my tank is full and my needs are met, and I'm being responsible for my life, I'm exercising agency over my life, then there is room for me to meet others and offer things that would be mutually acceptable to the other, that benefit both of us. And we can exchange, and we can kind of bless and invest in each other. But why is this important for us to remember that I don't need to heal other people? I need to heal myself. I don't need to please others at my expense. I need to listen to my needs and desires. It's because as an empath, as a trauma survivor, I tend toward, for my own safety, making sure everyone else around me is good. Because if they're good, then I think that I'm good. And there's, that's good, like we've talked about, for a certain season, where safety is involved. But for most of for my adult life now, I'm not in that situation anymore. It was just the first 23 years. And now I don't need to live in survival mode. And it's safe and needed for me to claim the agency and power that I have over my life. So just out of habit, I will give up my power. I will give up my agency to make sure others are happy and prioritize them, and put myself at the bottom of the priority list. So this is why I need to remember this. Not everybody needs to remember this. Sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes the things that we have always taken to heart, like, serve others, prioritize others, certain personalities, certain people need to hear that message and make a focus of that. But when your focus and your tendency and your natural inclination, your response to life is to abandon yourself and take care of others, then you have to remind yourself constantly what is your job and what is not your job. So then the third meme talks about, or says, the most important spiritual growth doesn't happen when you're meditating or on a yoga mat. It happens in the midst of conflict, when you're frustrated, angry, or scared, and you're doing the same old thing, and then you suddenly realize that you have a choice to do it differently. So this is real world anomaly. It's not to say that meditating is not important, or doing yoga or mindful strength training like I enjoy is not important. It's like I enjoy playing pickleball, and it's really important to drill certain exercises with the ball. Certain there's the dinking and the dropping and the volleys and the drives and the lobs, and it's really helpful to practice all of those, to drill all of those. But in a game situation, it's not predictable like it is in a drill session. It's not steady like it is in a drill session. There's all kinds of variables. There's the pressure of this point matters. It's the real world application of all the drilling. So you have to do it in the game. You can't play it safe. You have to try things that you've never tried in a game before. You have to go for it and see what happens, and be uncomfortable, get comfortable being uncomfortable, and just put everything to the test and go for it. So that, I feel like, is the same thing. When life is happening and something goes wrong, and you're scared, or you're frustrated, or you're angry, that is the time to remember what you've done in meditation, what you've done on the yoga mat, the way that you calm your mind, the truths that you know about and you lean on and you hold on to. Like, that's the time to really lean on it, to really apply it, because that is when it's going to make a big difference. So we want to disrupt the patterns that we've been in, not just get caught up in the same habit, same pattern, same response, same what some people call personality. We want to change and become a different person than we have been for, in survival mode. We want to switch to a different mindset, a different resonance, and choose a different way of being, a different way of living. So it happens little by little, and moment by moment, choice by choice, anomaly by anomaly. So so I am going to be going over a couple of comments in response to this. So Monica commented on this last one, and I'll read the meme again and then read hers. The most important spiritual growth doesn't happen when you're meditating or on a yoga mat. It happens in the midst of conflict, when you're frustrated, angry, or scared, and you're doing the same old thing, and then you realize suddenly that you have a choice to do it differently. I don't know if you've had the experience of repeat nightmares, and then at some point you realize that you're in the dream, you become self-aware in the dream, and choose to do something different than you've ever done. And you use your voice and you set boundaries and you fight back or whatever it is, and it makes a big difference. So Monica says, love this. I learned a saying that is similar in its main message. A calm sea doesn't make for a good sailor. This message is really applicable to becoming a good writer, but also in life in general. We need both calm and some conflict or uncomfortable situations for growth. And I love that there is a need for calm too, because that's when you practice, that's when you recover, that's when you review, you make some new resolutions, you make some new choices, and you kind of settle into the transformation that happens during the times of conflict. So yeah, that's perfect, Monica. I love that you understand the value not only of the meditation and the yoga mat, but also the conflict and the opportunity for anomaly in there. So then in response to everything in general, Susie says, this makes me think of associations between health and chronic stress. For example, just a lot of worry or anxiety can do a number on your digestive system. Absolutely. And when I think about connections with self-respect and self-love, I think about how doubting my own thoughts and feelings can contribute to a background baseline of worry. Worrying about being wrong, overthinking a decision, stressing about aspects of the future and my choices, questioning if I am doing the right thing. And the root of some of my self-doubt lie in having my feelings dismissed, my choices questioned or disapproved of, too much overcorrection over unnecessary and trivial things as a child, a pinch of gaslighting. Absolutely. It's funny because I can be confident and decisive in many ways, but there is this nagging little thread of distrust of my own thoughts and feelings being true and valid sometimes. And that little bit of self-doubt can manifest as a fair amount of worrying. Yes, so it is interesting how, in my observation, parents especially, it happens in other circles too, but parents especially have the temptation to try to instill the insecurities that they have into their children, to instill the self-doubt that they have into their children, because they think of that as being the real world, and they want their child to be prepared for the real world. And sometimes it's just maleficent, but sometimes it is wanting to protect the child by making sure that they already have some self-doubt before they go out into the world and get crushed. So yeah, but it's amazing how that, what we learn about ourselves and what we form beliefs around about life will carry on and affect us for a lifetime if we don't acknowledge it and address it. So yeah, it permeates aspects of our being and our thinking. So being aware of that is massive, and consciously choosing something else is also really effective. So sometimes it's there's a temptation to as soon as I think, oh, there's a negative thought pattern, what am I going to do about the negative thought pattern? And I get stuck in the cycle of trying to think, okay, how do I undo this massive thought pattern that I've had my entire life? When really all I need to do is recognize the thought pattern, acknowledge it, kind of thank it for logically being there from certain circumstances, and then say, I no longer agree with this belief, and instead I choose to believe, and just like make this declaration, because a belief is just a thought we keep thinking. So if we can just not, if we can choose not to be continue thinking that thought anymore, then that makes a major halt in that pattern and allows us to kind of get out of the trap and seduction of that thought pattern. So Susie says, or a parent who is fearful of the world may instill fear of the world to protect the child. Absolutely. Yeah. So parents, who experienced certain trauma and developed certain fears can just try to train their child in that, even though the child doesn't have that trauma, which is kind of crazy to think about. So yeah, thank you, Susie, for sharing that. And then Sally Dunn, my mom, said, I'm sure I do have a higher level of stress and anxiety that affects my immune system and other physical systems. I'm very anxious about running errands, for example. I have to time them and not schedule too many in one outing. All I can think about is getting home. I've even gone home just so I could regroup and then decided I could handle going out again to get the rest done. It's not efficient time and gas-wise, but that's how I could get everything done. Imagine if that's how hard it is to get out for things I have to do. I'm not excited about doing things just for fun. Right, what is fun in that situation? I think it's a given that that level of anxiety is affecting my health. Yes, absolutely. So, so some of it is like the anomaly piece is looking to purposely shake things up or switch things up or do something different than you typically do in order to show your body your emotional patterns, your mental patterns, that something different is possible and something different can be good. I'm trying to think of, because I know that for me, getting out of the house, getting away for the first time at 22, and I'd been out of the house before, but I'd only done exactly what I was told to do and what I was supposed to do. So that first drive into town, even though I had driven into town before, and I'd driven into town on my own before, and driven a long ways before, I'd never done it without my dad knowing or giving permission or praying protection over me. And that was terrifying. I remember, that was when I talked to the Marine recruiter. He had me do a preliminary test, and it was like a 20-minute version of the ASVAB test. And I think my awkwardness and anxiety and all that must have been apparent, because he acted like he was just kind of tolerating me like I was a joke. I'm sure I look like a scared cat, but he had me do this 20-minute test, and he like left the office, and I was in there by myself, and I was doing the test. And then he came back in, and he was like, "Holy cow!" I can't remember exactly. He probably said something else, but I did really, really well. And so then he got excited about recruiting me for the Marines because, yeah, he was going to get a good commission off of that, I think. But so then he had me. He scheduled me for a follow-up appointment the next week or something to do some more stuff, and I was really scared and already thinking, oh, I should probably just go home and pretend like this never happened. But when he scheduled that follow-up appointment with me, one thing that I was very, very bound to was I don't say I can do something and then not do it. Like keeping my word was like so ingrained to the point that it took me a long time to realize that I could change my mind if something wasn't good for me anymore. If I was being exploited or damaged or whatever, it was okay for me to no longer agree to something that I had agreed to. So, but that was the thing that made that continue and helped me commit to this path that I was on of getting out, because it could have been so close for me to just go back home, pretend like that never happened, and be repentant for having disobeyed or dishonored my dad or whatever, and just go back and be under his authority and stay under his control for how many more years. But yeah, so from that moment on, I had to do things that terrified me, that just like rattled my nervous system and kind of took me out of body because of the overwhelm and the fear and the anxiety. But I just kept doing it. And so then my comfort zone has expanded over and over and over again, and now I want to experience discomfort in the direction of my dreams, discomfort in the direction of my desires, not just random discomfort just to challenge myself, but actually push myself out of my comfort zone in the direction that I want to actually go in, that I know ultimately, that I know in those quiet moments, in meditation and on the yoga mat, like those quiet moments are where I set my intentions and my goals so that I can hang on to that when I'm in the chaotic moments and the, what was the word that was used? Conflict, in the midst of conflict, in the midst of frustration, anger, and fear. So yeah. So part of it is, so coming back to the very first meme, we haven't been taught self-love and self-respect. When we haven't been taught self-love and self-respect, those things might have to start with behaving toward ourselves as if we were someone we loved and respected, even if we're not quite feeling it yet. It's not about faking it, it's about getting practice with it. So when we when we practice self-love, when we practice self-respect, the world becomes a friendlier place. Because we are connected to our power. And our power and our self-love and our self-respect is what brings safety. It's no longer having to monitor and manage everyone and everything around us in order to be safe. We choose our power. We choose our self-love. We choose our self-respect. And that changes the game. That changes the field around us. And so if we can switch the view from feeling inauthentic, like we're faking it, to just practicing, that I think will make all the difference and allow us to move forward. So hopefully this was encouraging. Would love to hear any more thoughts and ideas. Comments on this video or post in the group. Hope you guys have a great week. Love you. Talk to you soon.